Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today, it is Poetry Thursday, so I want to talk about some beautiful and interesting poetry that I found. A poem about racism and similar things, and possibly also sexism. I am referring to the Man Who Shouted, "I Like Pork Fried Rice" at me on the street by Franny Choi. A pretty interesting poem, and also a very long title to remember. For those who don't know, Franny Choi is a fairly new poet, debuting in the past 10 years. She's Korean American. She is also described as queer on Wikipedia, but I'm not really sure what the exact meaning of that is. As I'm sure a lot of people are probably confused by what queer is, as there's probably multiple definitions out there. Franny Choi is commonly known for slam poetry, a new style for our new age, and she also writes about identity and growing up in a white society in her poetry. So interesting ideas, and you see some of that reflected in today's poem. So without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I'll read it, do a little analysis, and move on from there. To the man who shouted, "I like pork fried rice" at me on the street. You want to eat me out, right? What does it taste like? You want to eat me right out of these jeans and into something a little cheaper, more digestible, more bite-sized, more thank you, come. I am greasy for you. I slick my hair with MSG every morning. I'm bad for you. Got some red light district between your teeth. What does it taste like? A takeout box between my legs. Plastic bag lady. Flimsy white fork to snap in half. Dispose of me. Tastes like dried squid. Lips puffy with salt. Lips brimming with foreign, so call me pork. Curly-tailed obscenity been playing in the mud. Dirty meat. Worms in your stomach. Give you a fever, dead meat, butchered girl chopped up and cradled in styrofoam. You candid cannibal. You want me bite-sized, no eyes clogging your throat, but I've been watching from the slaughterhouse. Ever since you named me edible, tossed in a cookie at the end, lucky man, go and take what's yours. Name yourself archaeologist. But listen carefully to the squelches in your teeth and hear my sow squeal scream murder between molars. Watch salt awaken writhe synapse. Watch me kick back to life. Watch me tentacles and teeth. Watch me resurrected electric. What does it taste like? Revenge squirming alive in your mouth, strangling you quiet from the inside out. And so that was To the Man Who Shouted, "I Like Pork Fried Rice" at me on the street. In terms of analysis, on the surface of the poem, you see that she's responding to a man who lobbed racist and sexist epithets that are on the street, sort of, responding in a very brutal way that I think is quite effective. One thing that stands out to me is how she gets at the racism in this poem. She says, more thank you come. I am greasy for you. I slick my hair with MSG every morning. I'm bad for you. Got some red light district between your teeth. What does it taste like? A takeout box between my legs. Plastic bag lady. Flimsy white fork to snap in half. Dispose of me. And you see right there that she's responding to his shouting of a racist thing to say, of a stereotype, by highlighting more stereotypes, turning the racism back on him and saying, this is what you sound like. She cites MSG, which is something that white people often say, oh, MSG is addicting, those Asians are trying to get you. I've never really understood that. There's a lot of addicting chemicals in every food. What difference does MSG make? Never really understood that. She also mentions the red light district, possibly how a lot of white men make fun of Asian sex workers and stuff like that. A takeout box between my legs, plastic bag ladies, just general misconceptions and stereotypes about Asian women, and she's displaying it all here. This is what you sound like, and I appreciate that part of the poem. She also highlights the misogyny at play here, how women are commonly seen as sex objects and nothing more, playthings. And she says, give you a fever, dead meat, butchered girl chopped up and cradled in styrofoam, you candid cannibal, you want me bite-sized, no eyes clogging your throat. And that's a pretty gross and gruesome image, but it's what he's conjuring up. Like he's saying, I want to eat you. You are pork fried rice. You are no different from that to me. Possibly he didn't mean it in that way, but that's how it comes across. And when you shout to a woman on the street, you're viewing her as no different than an object. In this case, she's equating herself to pork fried rice. So what he wants to do is literally eat her, turn himself into a cannibal. She says butchered girl chopped up and cradled in styrofoam, and it's like, this is how a lot of men view women sometimes, especially the terrible men who view women as nothing more than objects, just playthings. It'd be better if they were dead, because then they'd be more submissive. And I think that's a lot of what she's getting at in this poem, how rather than being exuberant and stand your ground, sometimes men like these who shout racism as they pass by, would rather women be submissive in this case. But in the final two verses of the poem, she notes that she's not going to be submissive. Franny Choi, or the narrator, is going to assert herself and let her accoster, the verbal accoster, note that she's not just gonna take this without a fight. She says, but listen carefully to the squelches in your teeth and hear my sow squeal scream murder between molars. Watch salt awaken writhe synapse, watch me kick back to life, watch me tentacles and teeth, watch me resurrected electric. And then she goes on to note how she's going to make these words like choke in the back of his throat. Very painful. I especially like the phrase resurrected electric. I feel it really flows, and it sounds really good, and it really highlights how, again, she's not going to be submissive. She's going to buzz with energy. She's going to stand her ground and let this man know that his racism, his misogyny, his terrible behavior on the street is not appreciated. I think the last thing I want to talk about is how I'm possibly the worst person at this moment to be reading this poem. I really liked it and I wanted to talk about it, but I also realized that it doesn't quite work being a man, because she's directing this at the man on the street, and all men. So by me reading it, it feels like it has less of an impact. Perhaps I need to address that in the future when I encounter more feminine-led poems that are addressing feminine concerns. I could possibly have, one of my lady friends on this channel to read a poem or something like that. It's food for thought in the future. And then there's also the fact that there's a whole bunch of anti-Asian sentiment going around right now. Historically, there's been a lot of anti-Asian sentiment, but when the former president blames an Asian nation for the coronavirus, the Asian sentiment grows. And although this poem was written it was published in the journal Poetry in March of 2014, it still rings true today. That a lot of Asian women, especially with what happened in Atlanta, but in general, a lot of Asian women experience this type of racism and have to combat it on a daily basis. And I feel that's important to note, that this isn't something that's just random. This isn't something that just happened out of the blue. This is a pattern of systemic racism. And it doesn't matter if the person at hand knows that Franny Choi is Korean American. What matters is she fits the description of an Asian-looking woman who you can shout this at. And so I think that's another important takeaway from this poem. Anyway, those are my thoughts on To the Man Who Shouted I Like Pork Fried Rice at Me on the Street. A pretty great poem and worth talking about. I definitely recommend that you read it, so I will put a link to it in the description. I hope you enjoy it, and let's talk about it. If you have any thoughts on it, or you want to talk about my review, feel free to comment below. I would always love to have a discussion. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about Franny Choi. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and non-racist travels. Farewell.